I'm 71 years old, and I just watched my daughter plan my funeral while I'm still breathing. Let me say that again, because I still can't quite believe it myself. My own daughter, the baby I carried for 9 months, the child I raised, the woman I sacrificed everything for looked at me and saw a corpse with a bank account. And the worst part? She didn't even have the decency to wait until I was actually dead before spending my money. All $800,000 of it. Money she doesn't have. Money she's never going to get. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we continue, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. And let us know where in the world you're watching from in the comments. Let me take you back to where this nightmare started, because betrayal never announces itself with trumpets and warning signs. It slithers in quietly, disguised as love. 8 months ago, my husband Robert died. Not dramatically, no car crash or sudden heart attack. Just a quiet departure after 63 years of breathing, like he'd simply decided he was finished with this world and moved on to the next. We'd been married for 47 years. He was a civil engineer, the kind of man who built bridges and believed in solid foundations. He left me comfortable, not wealthy, but secure. A 4-bedroom colonial in suburban Connecticut, fully paid off. Retirement accounts. Savings. The house alone was worth $500,000, and combined with everything else, the estate totaled around $800,000. Not billionaire money, but enough to live on for the rest of my days without worry. Robert's funeral was beautiful in that terrible way funerals can be. Flowers everywhere, people saying kind things, casseroles appearing on my doorstep like magic. My daughter Vanessa came, of course. She's 45 now, married to a man named James, no children. She'd always been ambitious, always reaching for something just beyond her grasp. But she'd also been distant. Before Robert died, we saw her maybe twice a year, Christmas and an obligatory summer visit where she'd spend most of the time on her phone, checking work emails from her job as a pharmacy manager at CVS. But after the funeral, something changed. Suddenly, Vanessa was calling every other day, stopping by on Sundays with takeout, asking how I was sleeping, whether I needed anything if the house felt too empty. At first, I was grateful. Grief is a peculiar animal. It lives in your chest like a stone, and sometimes you need someone to sit with you and acknowledge the weight of it. I thought maybe losing her father had awakened something in Vanessa, some realization that life is short and family matters. I was such a fool. The questions started small. Innocent, even. During one of those Sunday dinners about 3 months after Robert's death, Vanessa was helping me clean up when she asked, "Mom, have you thought about updating your will? You know, since Dad's gone." I told her I had an appointment with Lawrence, my estate attorney. Just routine stuff, making sure everything was in order. She nodded, wiping down the counter with more vigor than necessary, and said, "That's smart. It's important to have things organized." Then she paused, the dishcloth still in her hand, and asked, "So what's going to happen with everything? The house and everything?" I didn't think much of it. It seemed like a reasonable question from a daughter concerned about her mother's affairs. So I told her the truth. Everything's in order. When I'm gone, you'll inherit the house and the accounts. You're my only child, sweetheart. Who else would I leave it to? The look on her face, I should have recognized it then. Her eyes literally sparkled, like someone had flipped a switch behind them. She hugged me, but it was too tight, too intense, her fingers digging into my shoulders. "Don't talk like that, Mom," she said, her voice thick with something I mistook for emotion. "But it's good you're prepared. Really good." After she left that night, I stood at the kitchen window watching her car disappear down the street, and I felt something cold brush against my spine. Robert used to say I had good instincts, that I could read people. But grief does strange things to your radar. It makes you want to see the best in everyone, especially your own child. So I ignored that whisper of unease and went to bed. 3 weeks later, Vanessa quit her job. She called me on a Tuesday morning, bubbling with excitement. "Mom, I did it. I finally did it. I quit CVS. I'm done working for other people, done with the stress and the corporate nonsense. I'm going to focus on living my life." She was making $95,000 a year. She had health insurance, a retirement plan, stability. And she just walked away. I tried to keep the concern out of my voice when I asked about her mortgage, her bills, how she'd manage. She laughed, actually laughed, and said, "I've got it covered, Mom. I've made arrangements." Trust me, arrangements. That word should have set off alarm bells. 2 weeks after that, she showed up at my house in a brand new Tesla Model X, sleek, black, completely silent as it pulled into my driveway. $110,000 worth of electric vehicle. When I walked out to admire it, because what else do you do when your daughter shows up in a car that costs more than some houses, she was practically vibrating with pride. "It's leased," she said quickly, before I could ask. But when she asked me to grab her sunglasses from the glove compartment later that afternoon, I saw the financing paperwork. Not a lease. A purchase. Down payment. $35,000. Where does an unemployed woman get $35,000 for a car down payment? I didn't ask. God help me, I didn't ask. The spending spree continued like a runaway train. 2 weeks later, Vanessa announced she'd booked a Mediterranean cruise. 21 days. Premium suite with a balcony. $18,000. "Life's too short, Mom," she said, showing me the brochures with glossy photos of turquoise water and white stone buildings. "You taught me that when Dad died. You can't take it with you, right?" She was using my husband's death as justification for financial suicide, and I was too stunned to do anything but nod. Then came the kitchen renovation. I heard about it at church before Vanessa even told me. The contractor who was doing the work, a man named Bill Hendricks, approached me after Sunday service and said, "Your daughter's got ambitious plans for that kitchen. $60,000 project, custom cabinets, marble countertops, the works. Must be nice to have that kind of budget." He smiled like he'd just complimented her taste. I smiled back because what else could I do in the middle of the church vestibule? $60,000 for a kitchen while unemployed. That Sunday, I drove to Vanessa's house unannounced. The kitchen was torn apart, walls opened up, old cabinets ripped out, subflooring exposed. Vanessa was standing in the middle of the chaos with a tile sample in each hand, debating between Carrara and Calacatta marble. When she saw me, she grinned. "Mom, what do you think?" I'm leaning toward the Calacatta, but James thinks it might be too bold. I looked at the destruction around us, at the expensive materials stacked in the corner, at my daughter's face glowing with excitement over countertops she couldn't afford. "Vanessa," I said carefully, "how are you paying for all of this? The car, the cruise, this renovation, you don't have a job." Her smile didn't falter. If anything, it got brighter, harder, like lacquer over wood. "Don't worry about it, Mom. Seriously. I know what I'm doing. I've got assets." The way she said that last word, assets, with such confidence, such certainty, it made my stomach turn. "You just focus on taking care of yourself," she continued, touching my arm with fingers that felt too cold. "Let me worry about my finances." I drove home that day with my hands shaking on the steering wheel, Robert's voice in my head saying, "Something's wrong. Something's very wrong." But what could I do? She was 45 years old. I couldn't control her choices. I couldn't force her to be responsible. So I did what every mother does when confronted with their child's incomprehensible decisions. I worried in silence and hoped it would somehow work itself out. It didn't work itself out. It exploded. On a Tuesday night at 10 o'clock, my phone rang. James, Vanessa's husband. I almost didn't answer because who calls that late unless someone's died? But I picked up and immediately I knew something was catastrophically wrong. James was crying. Not quiet tears, but great gasping sobs that made his words almost incomprehensible. "Diane," he choked out, "I'm so sorry about your diagnosis. Why didn't you tell me? Vanessa said you didn't want people to know, but I'm family. I should have been there for you. I should have." The room tilted. "What diagnosis?" Silence. Then, in a voice that had gone very small, James said, "The cancer. Stage 4. Vanessa said you have 6 months left. Maybe less." My mouth went dry. My hands went numb. The phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "James, I don't have cancer. I don't have anything. The silence that followed was the sound of a man's world crumbling in real time. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed completely, gone from grief to dawning horror. "She told me 3 months ago," he whispered. "She's been planning everything. The expenses, the loans. She said we needed to prepare for the transition." Oh God. Oh no. What has she done? What has she done? I'll tell you what she did. She killed me off while I was still alive. James confessed everything in that phone call, words tumbling out like he couldn't hold them back anymore. Vanessa had calculated my inheritance at $800,000. She'd used that number, that future, hypothetical number, as collateral. She'd taken out personal loans listing pending inheritance as an asset. She'd borrowed $40,000 from James's retirement account, telling him they needed liquid funds to handle my end-of-life care. She'd even contacted a probate lawyer and researched funeral homes. My daughter had planned my death with the efficiency of a project manager. But here's what made my blood run cold, what made me sit in Robert's old chair long after James hung up, staring at nothing while my heart hammered in my chest. James told me Vanessa had been telling people at her country club that I was declining rapidly, that I was too proud to admit how sick I was. She'd been accepting sympathy casseroles and donations for my care. She'd built an entire narrative where I was dying, and she was the devoted daughter preparing for the inevitable. Except I wasn't dying. I wasn't even sick. I was perfectly, infuriatingly, inconveniently healthy. The next morning, I called Dr. Morrison's office before they even opened, leaving a message that probably sounded unhinged. When he called back, concern evident in his voice, I demanded a full workup. Every test. Cancer screenings, cardiac panels, blood work, everything. "Diane," he said gently, "you were just here last month for your annual physical. You're in excellent health for someone your age. You're in excellent health for someone 20 years younger." "I need it in writing," I said. "Every test. I need proof that I'm not dying." He didn't argue. Maybe he heard something in my voice that made him realize this wasn't about hypochondria. 3 days later, I sat in his office while he went through the results. Blood pressure, perfect. Cholesterol, excellent. Heart, strong. Lungs, clear. Cancer markers, negative across the board. Dr. Morrison leaned back in his chair and said with a smile, "Diane, I'd bet money you've got another 20 years in you. Maybe more. You're healthier than most of my 50-year-old patients." 20 years. My doctor was giving me 20 years while my daughter was spending money she'd calculated I'd leave her in 6 months. I drove home with those medical reports on the passenger seat, and something fundamental shifted inside me. The grief I'd been carrying since Robert died, it crystallized into something else. Something harder. Colder. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call Vanessa and demand an explanation. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd raised her, where I'd helped her with homework and listened to her teenage heartbreaks, and I smiled. My daughter wanted me dead so she could have my money? Fine. Let's see what happens when the corpse refuses to lie down. I didn't confront Vanessa. And that decision, that choice to stay silent, became the most powerful weapon I'd ever wielded. You see, most people, when they discover betrayal like this, they explode. They call family meetings, they scream, they demand explanations, they give the betrayer a chance to spin new lies, to manipulate, to pivot their strategy. But I'd learned something from 47 years of marriage to an engineer. The strongest structures are built on patience and precision. Robert used to say that if you want to bring down a bad foundation, you don't attack it with a sledgehammer. You identify the weak points, remove the supports one by one, and let gravity do the work. Vanessa had built her entire future on a foundation of my death. So I decided to do something she'd never expect. I decided to live. Loudly. Publicly. Undeniably. But first, I needed to make sure she couldn't touch a single penny of what she'd been counting on. The morning after I got my clean bill of health, I called Lawrence Chin, my estate attorney. Lawrence and Robert had golfed together for years. He was someone I trusted implicitly. When his receptionist tried to schedule me out 3 weeks, I said 6 words that got me an appointment that same afternoon. My daughter is committing financial fraud. I sat in Lawrence's office, wood-paneled and smelling of old books and expensive coffee, and I told him everything. The fake cancer diagnosis, the loans against my pending death, the spending spree funded by money that didn't exist yet. With every sentence, Lawrence's expression grew darker. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, his fingers steepled under his chin. Finally, he said, "Diane, I've been practicing law for 32 years. I've seen children contest wills, fight over estates, even attempt to manipulate elderly parents. But I've never seen someone quite literally bet on their parents' death like this." What do you want to do? What did I want to do? I wanted my daughter to understand what it felt like to have your future ripped away. I wanted her to experience the same sick, plummeting sensation I'd felt when James told me she'd been planning my funeral. But more than that, I wanted her to face the consequences of her choices without any safety net, without any inheritance to cushion the fall. "I want to change my will," I said. "I want to leave her nothing." Lawrence nodded slowly. "Who do you want as beneficiaries?" I'd thought about this during the sleepless night after James's call. "The county animal shelter," I said. "For 100,000. Robert loved dogs. We always talked about getting another golden retriever after our last one passed, but then his health declined. I want the money to go there in his memory." Lawrence was writing this down, but I wasn't finished. "The other 400,000 goes to establish a scholarship fund for pharmacy students from low-income families who want to get their degrees, but can't afford the programs." Lawrence's pen stopped moving. He looked up at me, and I saw the moment he understood. Vanessa had been a pharmacy manager, a good one, making excellent money before she quit to wait for me to die. The scholarship would fund the very career she'd abandoned out of greed. "That's poetic justice," Lawrence said quietly. "That's accountability," I corrected. We spent the next 2 hours drafting an ironclad will. Lawrence brought in a notary. We triple-checked every clause, every contingency. When it was done, Lawrence looked at me over his reading glasses and said, "Diane, she's going to fight this. When you pass, and I pray that's decades from now, she'll contest this will. She'll claim undue influence, diminished capacity, anything she can think of. Then include a no-contest clause," I said. "If she challenges the will, she gets nothing. Not even $1. "Already in there," Lawrence said with a grim smile. I left his office with a document that would destroy my daughter's plans. But that was just the first move. Now came the part one was actually going to enjoy. That weekend, I did something I'd never done in my 71 years. I took out a full-page advertisement in the local newspaper. The Wilton Gazette has a circulation of about 15,000, not huge, but everyone in our town reads it. It's where you find out who died, who's getting married, which businesses are opening. It's the pulse of the community. The ad cost $1,200. Worth every penny. I'd spent hours crafting it with almost giddy precision. At the top, in bold letters, celebrating life, Diane Foster's 20-year retirement adventure begins. Below that, a photo of me, not some old picture, but a new one I'd had taken at a portrait studio, where I was beaming, holding up my medical reports from Dr. Morrison. The text read, "After recent comprehensive health screenings confirmed I'm in perfect condition, with my doctor predicting at least 2 more decades of vitality, I'm thrilled to announce my plans for the next chapter. Thanks to my late husband Robert's careful planning and wise investments, I have the freedom to spend my retirement traveling the world, supporting causes close to my heart, and truly living life to the fullest. I plan to embrace every opportunity, experience everything I've dreamed of, and use every single penny to create memories and give back to this wonderful community. Here's to 20 more years of adventures." Every word was a calculated strike. Perfect condition. 2 more decades. Every single penny. I wanted anyone reading it, especially Vanessa's friends at that country club, to understand that I wasn't dying, I wasn't sick, and I was planning to spend all of my money myself. The ad ran on Sunday. By Monday morning, my phone was exploding. Friends calling to congratulate me on my good health, asking about my travel plans, saying how inspiring it was that I was embracing life after losing Robert. Mrs. Patterson from book club actually cried, happy tears, saying she'd been so worried about me, but this was wonderful news. What none of them said directly, but what I heard in the spaces between their words, was the unspoken question, weren't you supposed to be dying? Because apparently Vanessa had spread that lie far and wide. People had been treating me with the kid-glove sympathy reserved for the terminally ill, and I'd been too grief-fogged to notice. Now they were recalibrating, realizing they'd been fed a false narrative. I could almost hear the gossip spreading through town like wildfire. Vanessa called at 11 o'clock Monday morning. I let it ring 4 times before answering, taking a sip of coffee first, making sure my voice was perfectly calm. "Hello, sweetheart." Her voice was strained tight, like a wire about to snap. "Mom, I saw the newspaper ad. What is this about?" "Oh, didn't I tell you?" I kept my tone light, breezy, the way you'd discuss weekend plans. Dr. Morrison gave me the most wonderful news. All my tests came back perfect, better than perfect, really. He says I'm healthier than most 50-year-olds. Can you believe it? I've got another 20 years at least. Silence. Not thoughtful silence, but the kind of silence that screams. Finally, but I thought, you said. Said what, honey? She couldn't answer. She literally could not form the words because to answer would be to admit what she'd done. I waited, letting the silence stretch like taffy, and I swear I could hear her heartbeat through the phone. I didn't know you were planning such big retirement adventures, she finally managed. Well, why wouldn't I said, and now I let a little steel creep into my voice. I'm healthy. I'm only 71. Robert left me comfortable. I'd be foolish not to enjoy it while I can. Actually, I've been thinking about buying an RV. Can you imagine? Me in an RV, traveling cross-country. The sharp intake of breath on the other end was delicious. An RV would cost money. My money. Money she'd already spent in her mind. Mom, we should talk about this. Financial planning, you know, at your age. My age. I laughed. Vanessa, I'm in perfect health. Dr. Morrison said people my age with my vitality often live into their 90s. I could have another 25 years. Isn't that wonderful? Each word was a nail in her coffin. Her plan required my death in months, not decades. I have to go, she said abruptly. I'll call you later. She didn't call later. But I wasn't done. Step 3 of my plan involved something I never thought I'd do. I joined Vanessa's country club. Hampton Ridge Country Club, with its manicured golf courses and tennis courts and ladies who lunch. $5,000 for annual membership. Vanessa had joined 2 years ago, stretching her budget even then to be part of the right social circle. This was where she'd been collecting sympathy about her dying mother. Time to crash that party. I showed up to the Thursday ladies' luncheon wearing a new outfit, a vibrant coral dress that screamed vitality, and walked into that dining room like I owned it. The reaction was instantaneous. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Women turned to stare. I recognized several faces from church, from the grocery store, from around town. And I knew, from the shock in their eyes, that they'd heard I was at death's door. I waved cheerfully and made my way to the buffet. Within minutes, I was surrounded. Diane, we had no idea you joined. You look absolutely wonderful. Are you feeling better? That last question came from Janet Morehouse, a woman who'd sent me a sympathy card last month. I smiled at her. Better? I feel fantastic. I've never felt better in my life, actually. Oh, but Vanessa said you were so ill. The room went quiet. Everyone was listening now. I could see Vanessa across the room, frozen near the French doors, her face the color of old milk. Ill? I let confusion color my voice, like this was the first I'd heard of such a ridiculous idea. Wherever did she get that idea? I just had my annual physical, got all my tests done, actually, more comprehensive than usual, and Dr. Morrison says I'm in perfect health. He actually joked that I'll probably outlive him. I laughed, bright and clear. The women around me laughed too, but uncertainly. Someone said, well, that's wonderful news. But I could see the wheels turning in their heads. Why would Vanessa tell them her mother was dying if she wasn't? What else had she lied about? I spent the next hour working that room like a politician. I mentioned my travel plans. Ireland was looking lovely in the spring. I talked about the donation I was planning to the animal shelter. I showed anyone interested the photos on my phone from Dr. Morrison's office. I was radiant, healthy, and very much alive. Vanessa left early. She couldn't look at me. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The following week, I did something else unexpected. I started dating. His name was Gordon Reeves, retired dentist, 68 years old, widowed 3 years ago. We met at a charity fundraiser for the library. I'd started attending every social event I could find, making myself visible, making sure people saw me thriving. Gordon was charming, with silver hair and kind eyes, and when he asked if I'd like to have dinner sometime, I said yes. Not because I was ready to replace Robert. You don't replace 47 years of marriage. But because I deserved companionship, and more importantly, because I knew Vanessa would see it as another sign that I wasn't going anywhere. Our first date was at Marcello's, the most popular Italian restaurant in town. I made sure to post a photo on Facebook, which I'd rarely used before Robert died, but suddenly became very active on. Gordon and I smiling over wine glasses. Caption: Life begins at 71. Grateful for new beginnings. #blessed #new chapter. Within an hour, Vanessa had commented, "Mom, can we talk? Please call me." I didn't call. Gordon and I went out again the following week. And the week after that. We went to the botanical gardens, more photos posted. We attended a wine tasting. I tagged the location. We went to a concert. I checked in on Facebook. Each post was a broadcast. I'm alive, I'm happy, I'm spending my money on experiences, and I'm not stopping anytime soon. But while I was busy living my best life publicly, Vanessa's world was collapsing privately. And I knew about every crack, every crumbling brick, because James Poor, betrayed James, kept me updated. The Tesla payment came due in month 2. $1,800 a month. Vanessa missed the first payment. Then the second. Her credit score, already strained, started plummeting. The credit card bills came next. She'd maxed out 5 cards between the cruise deposit, renovation costs, and various other expenses. $47,000 in total. The minimum payments alone were $1,200 monthly. Without income, without my impending death to bail her out, she was drowning. Month 3, the personal loan she'd taken out came due. $75,000 at 12% interest. She defaulted immediately. The bank sent collection notices. Then lawyers' letters. The kitchen renovation contractor filed a lien on her house for the $15,000 she still owed him. Half-installed cabinets sat in her kitchen like a monument to her greed. Month 4, James told me the Tesla had been repossessed. Right out of their driveway at 7 in the morning. The neighbors watched. Can you imagine the humiliation? That beautiful black Tesla that had announced her arrival into wealth that didn't exist, towed away while people she'd tried to impress watched from their windows and whispered. The country club friends noticed. Of course they noticed. Vanessa stopped coming to events. Stopped returning calls. The women who'd given her sympathy casseroles were now wondering if they'd been conned. I attended every ladies' luncheon. I smiled. I was gracious. I never mentioned Vanessa's absence. Month 5 brought the moment I'd been simultaneously dreading and anticipating. Vanessa showed up at my house unannounced. I was in the garden Robert had planted roses, and I'd been maintaining them, when her car pulled up. Not the Tesla this time, but her old Honda that had been relegated to backup vehicle status. She got out slowly, and I could see from 20 feet away that she'd lost weight. Her clothes hung wrong. Her hair needed cutting. She looked like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. Good. I stood up from the roses, pulled off my gardening gloves, and waited. She walked across the lawn like she was approaching a ledge, and when she got close enough, I saw her eyes were red-rimmed. "Mom," she said, and her voice cracked. "I need to talk to you." "About what?" I kept my voice neutral, gave her nothing. About finances. About? She couldn't seem to find the words. "Your finances or mine, Vanessa?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I've hit a rough patch. A really rough patch. And I was hoping. I thought maybe what? That I'd die soon and solve all your problems." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Vanessa's face crumbled. That's not, I never meant, Mom, please. I spoke to James, I said quietly. I know everything. If she'd been pale before, she went absolutely white now. What did he tell you? The truth. That you told him I had terminal cancer. That you calculated your inheritance down to the dollar. That you borrowed against my death. That you quit your job because you couldn't be bothered to work when you thought a windfall was coming. Each sentence was precisely delivered, a surgeon's cut. That you've been telling people I'm dying while I'm standing right here, breathing, living, healthier than I've been in years. She tried to speak, but only a choking sound came out. Tears started running down her face. I made a mistake. I panicked. I got scared about money and I made terrible decisions, but we can fix this. We can. Fix what exactly? I picked up my gardening shears, turned back to the roses. You made your choices, Vanessa. You decided your mother's death was worth more than her life. You decided $800,000 was worth more than my love, my time, my presence. So now you get to live with those choices. What about the will? The question burst out of her like she couldn't hold it back any longer. I'm still. You wouldn't. I looked at her over my shoulder. Wouldn't what? She couldn't finish. The question hung between us. You wouldn't cut me out completely, would you? But to ask it outright was to admit what she'd assumed, that she was entitled to my money, that my death was her payday. You should go, I said, turning back to my roses. I have plans with Gordon this evening. I heard her standing there for another minute, heard her crying, heard the moment she realized I wasn't going to comfort her or save her or give her anything. Then I heard her footsteps retreating, her car door closing, the engine starting. I didn't turn around. I just kept pruning roses, my hands steady, while my daughter drove away. That night, James called again. His voice was different now, not devastated, but cold, resolved. I'm filing for divorce, he said. I found out the full extent of it. She took out a second mortgage on our house without telling me. We're in debt over $180,000. My retirement is gone. She's been lying to me for months, maybe years. I can't do this anymore, Diane. I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me, I said. You're a victim in this too. Did you really change your will? I hesitated. Then, yes. Good, he said, and I heard genuine relief in his voice. Don't let her manipulate you back into it. She'll try. When things get bad enough, she'll cry and apologize and promise she's changed. But she hasn't. She won't. She only regrets getting caught. He was right, of course. But there was a small part of me, the mother part, the part that remembered a little girl with pigtails learning to ride a bike, that wondered if I was being too cruel. If there was still time to salvage something. Then I remembered James's voice on the phone that first night. She said you have 6 months. And my mercy evaporated. 6 months later, 9 months after this whole nightmare started, Vanessa filed for bankruptcy. James's divorce was finalized. She'd lost the house to foreclosure. She was living in a small apartment on the other side of town, working as a cashier at Target for $15 an hour. Everything she'd built, everything she'd reached for, gone. Destroyed by her own greed. And me? I was thriving. I'd gone on 2 trips with Gordon, one to Maine to see the fall foliage, another to Charleston to tour historic homes. I donated $10,000 to the animal shelter in Robert's name and attended the dedication ceremony where they named a new kennel wing after him. I'd never been happier. But sometimes, late at night, I'd think about Vanessa in that tiny apartment and I'd wonder, was destroying her enough? Or was there something else she needed to learn? Because here's what I was starting to realize. Revenge can be satisfying, but it's also hollow. I'd taken everything from her, just as she'd tried to take everything from me. We were even, in a terrible sort of way. But even wasn't enough anymore. I wanted something more. I just didn't know what yet. 9 months after everything collapsed, I received a letter that changed the entire trajectory of this story. But before I tell you about that letter, I need you to understand something important. Revenge, when you finally get it, tastes like ashes in your mouth. I'd spent months watching Vanessa's life crumble. I'd attended charity galas while she worked checkout lanes at Target. I'd posted photos from Ireland while she fielded calls from debt collectors. I'd smiled at country club brunches while she ate ramen noodles in a studio apartment with water-stained ceilings. Everything I'd planned had worked perfectly. She'd lost her house, her marriage, her social standing, her future. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt empty. Not guilty, let me be clear about that. She'd earned every consequence that found her. But there's a difference between justice and satisfaction, and I was learning that lesson the hard way. You can destroy someone who wronged you and still feel like you've lost something essential in the process. Robert used to say that the problem with revenge is that it requires you to keep the wound fresh, to maintain your anger like a fire that needs constant feeding. And I was tired of feeding that fire. I was sitting on my back porch with Gordon on a Sunday afternoon in early October when the mail came. Gordon had become a fixture in my life, not a replacement for Robert, but a genuine companion. We just returned from a weekend trip to Vermont, and he was telling me about a theater production he wanted us to see when I noticed the envelope. Hand-addressed. Vanessa's handwriting, which I'd recognize anywhere after decades of birthday cards and grocery lists and notes left on the refrigerator. My first instinct was to throw it away unopened. What could she possibly say that would matter? But Gordon noticed my expression and asked gently from her. I nodded. Maybe you should read it, he said. Or maybe you shouldn't. But you'll wonder either way. He was right. I'd wonder. So that night, after Gordon went home, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd made so many decisions in this saga, and I opened the envelope. 8 pages. Front and back. The first line read, "Mom, I don't expect you to read this. But I need to write it anyway." I almost stopped there. But something made me continue. The letter wasn't what I expected. It wasn't an apology, not exactly. It was a confession. Vanessa wrote about things I'd never known, feelings she'd never shared. She wrote about growing up as the daughter of a successful engineer and a beloved schoolteacher, my career before retirement, and always feeling like she was racing to keep up with expectations she'd invented in her own head. She wrote about the pharmacy degree she'd earned while working 2 jobs, determined to prove she could be successful on her own terms. She wrote about the moment Dad died and how something broke inside her, some fundamental sense of security. When Dad died, she wrote, I realized I wasn't prepared. Not financially, not emotionally, not in any way. James and I had been living paycheck to paycheck for years, pretending we were more stable than we were. The country club membership, the nice cars, it was all performance. We were drowning. And when I saw what Dad left you, when I understood you'd be fine forever while I was scrambling, something poisonous took root in me. She described the calculation not as malicious, but as desperate. She'd convinced herself that I was old, that death was imminent anyway, that she was just planning ahead for an inevitable transition. I didn't wish you dead, she wrote. I just started living as if you already were. And I know that's worse somehow. I know that's unforgivable. The letter went on. She detailed the spending, the lies to James, the fake cancer diagnosis that started as a small deception and metastasized into something monstrous. She wrote about the moment James called her after speaking with me and how her entire constructed reality shattered in seconds. I saw myself clearly for the first time, she wrote, and I couldn't breathe from the shame of it. She described the bankruptcy, the divorce, the repossession. But more than that, she described the social death. Everyone knows what I did, she wrote. I can't go anywhere in this town without seeing pity or disgust in people's eyes. I thought losing the money would be the worst part. But it's losing myself or realizing I'd already lost myself long before any of this happened. Near the end, she wrote something that hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I don't blame you for what you did. I don't even blame you for hating me. I would hate me too. But I need you to know that I'm trying to understand how I became someone capable of what I did. I'm in therapy. I'm working. I'm taking a financial literacy class at the community college because I realized I never learned to manage money, only to chase it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just need you to know that I see what I did, and I'm ashamed, and I'm trying to become someone who could never do that again. The final line read, I'm sorry I waited until you were alive to tell you I love you. I should have said it every day. I sat with that letter for a long time. Hours, maybe. I read it twice, then 3 times. I looked for manipulation, for hidden asks, for some angle she was working. But I couldn't find one. It just read like a woman confronting the worst version of herself and trying to figure out how she got there. Did that excuse what she'd done? Absolutely not. Did it make me want to rush to her and fix everything? No. But it did make me think about something I'd been avoiding. What did I actually want from all of this? The next morning, I did something unexpected. I called Lawrence. I need to create a secondary provision in my will, I told him. Something conditional. What kind of condition? He asked. I want to establish a small fund, $25,000, that will go to Vanessa 10 years after my death, but only if she meets specific criteria at the time. I'd thought about this all night, and the parameters were clear in my mind. She has to have maintained continuous employment for those 10 years. She has to have no outstanding debts beyond a reasonable mortgage or car payment. And she has to submit annual financial statements proving she's living within her means. Lawrence was quiet for a moment. You're giving her a chance to earn it. I'm giving her a reason to stay on track, I corrected. 10 years is a long time. If she can maintain financial responsibility for that long, genuinely rebuild her life, then maybe she deserves something small. Not an inheritance, a reward for doing the work. And if she doesn't meet the criteria, then it goes to the scholarship fund with everything else. Lawrence added the provision. But I didn't tell Vanessa. This wasn't about dangling hope in front of her. This was about setting a standard and seeing if she could meet it without knowing there was a carrot at the end. 3 weeks after I received her letter, I did something else I didn't plan. I responded. Not with 8 pages of my own feelings, but with 1 paragraph. Vanessa, I read your letter. I believe you're ashamed. I don't know yet if you're changed. Those are different things. I'm not ready to have you back in my life, and I don't know if I ever will be. But I'm also not going to stand in the way of you rebuilding yourself. If you want to prove you've learned something from this catastrophe, prove it with your choices, not your words. Actions over years, not apologies in letters. If you do that, genuinely do that, maybe someday we can talk again. Maybe. I mailed it and tried not to think about what her face would look like when she read it. Tried not to imagine her hoping or despairing. I was giving her nothing concrete to hold on to, no timeline, no promise. Just a door that wasn't locked, even if it wasn't open either. The months passed. Fall turned to winter. Gordon and I went to Christmas concerts and New Year's parties. I volunteered at the animal shelter every Saturday, watching the Robert Foster Memorial Kennel Wing fill up with dogs who found new homes. The scholarship fund sent its first student to pharmacy school, a young woman from a single-parent household who cried when she got the award letter. I didn't hear from Vanessa. I didn't reach out. James occasionally sent me updates, not because I asked, but because I think he felt I had a right to know. She'd gotten a second job, he said. Weekends at a veterinary clinic as a receptionist. She was taking online classes to recertify her pharmacy license, which had lapsed. She'd moved to a slightly better apartment. Small steps, but forward motion. She asks about you sometimes, James told me once. I don't answer. But she asks. What does she ask? If you're happy. If you're healthy. If you hate her. I thought about that. Tell her, if she asks again, that I'm fine. That's all she needs to know. In February, I got a phone call from a program director at the community college. Mrs. Foster, I'm calling about the scholarship fund you established. We have a slight situation and I wanted your input. She explained that a woman in her mid-40s had applied for the pharmacy program scholarship. She's technically eligible, meets all the academic requirements, comes from a low-income background now, has a compelling story about career rebuilding. But I noticed her last name is the same as yours, and I wanted to make sure there wasn't a conflict before we considered her application. Vanessa had applied for the scholarship fund I'd created with the money she thought she'd inherit. The irony was so sharp it could cut glass. What's her application like? I asked. Honestly, one of the strongest we've received. Her essay about losing her career due to poor financial decisions and wanting to earn it back properly, it's quite moving. But again, if there's any conflict of interest. I had to make a decision in that moment. I could tell them who she was, disqualify her out of spite. Or I could do something I never imagined I'd be capable of. Treat her application exactly like any other, I said. No special consideration either way. If she's the most qualified candidate, she gets it. If she's not, she doesn't. But don't factor in our relationship. The director was silent. Then, that's remarkably gracious, Mrs. Foster. Was it gracious? Or was it the final test? I didn't know myself. 2 weeks later, the director called back. I wanted to let you know that the committee selected 3 scholarship recipients. Vanessa was one of them. She earned it on merit. I thought you'd want to know. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat very still, processing what I felt. It wasn't happiness exactly. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something more complicated, a sense that maybe, possibly, Vanessa was actually doing the work. That the letter hadn't been manipulation. That she was rebuilding herself brick by brick. I still didn't reach out. That wasn't my job anymore. My job was to live my life, which I was doing quite well. Spring came. Gordon proposed in April, nothing dramatic, just a quiet question over dinner about whether I'd like to spend whatever time we both had left as partners in the legal sense, not just the practical one. I said yes. We planned a small ceremony for June. Just friends, no family. I didn't invite Vanessa. I didn't tell her it was happening. But apparently someone did, because 3 days before the wedding, an envelope arrived. Inside was a card, store-bought, nothing fancy, and a handwritten note. Mom, I heard you're getting married. I'm happy for you. You deserve happiness. I won't come or reach out. I just wanted you to know I'm proud of you for choosing to live fully. That's something I'm still learning how to do. Love, Vanessa. There was also a check for $50 made out to the animal shelter. $50 she probably couldn't afford on her Target and veterinary clinic salary. A tiny, symbolic gesture that said, I'm thinking about what matters. I'm trying to honor Dad's memory the way you did. I cashed the check and donated it in her name. I didn't respond to the card, but I kept it. Gordon and I got married on a perfect June afternoon. It was simple and beautiful and exactly right. We honeymooned in Arizona. I'd never seen the desert, and it took my breath away. We decided to split our time between Connecticut and a small condo in Scottsdale. Life was good. Life was full. 2 years passed. Then 3. I turned 74, then 75. My health remained excellent. I traveled. I volunteered. I lived. And Vanessa? According to the updates I occasionally received through mutual acquaintances, she'd completed the pharmacy recertification program. She'd gotten a job at a hospital pharmacy, not a management position, but a solid role with benefits. She was paying down her debts systematically. She'd taken up volunteering at the animal shelter too, though on different days than me, careful not to intersect. She sent a card every birthday and Christmas. Never asking for anything, just brief updates on her life and wishes for my health. I never responded, but I never threw them away either. On my 76th birthday, Gordon asked me something over breakfast. Are you ever going to talk to her again? I'd been thinking about that question for years. I don't know, I said honestly. Part of me thinks too much damage was done. That some betrayals are too fundamental to come back from. And the other part? The other part thinks that people can change. That 4 years of consistent, demonstrable growth should count for something. But I don't know if I can trust it. I don't know if I can trust her. Maybe, Gordon said gently, it's not about trusting her. Maybe it's about whether you want to spend your remaining years, however many you have, carrying this wall around. That hit differently than I expected. I thought about it for weeks. And then I did something small, something that felt enormous. I sent Vanessa a text message. Just one line. I'm having coffee at Morrison's Cafe on Thursday at 10. You're welcome to join me if you'd like. Thursday morning, I arrived 15 minutes early. Ordered my usual coffee. Sat at a table near the window. And I waited, not knowing if she'd come, not knowing what I'd say if she did. At 9:58, the door opened. Vanessa walked in. She looked different. Older, obviously, for years had passed. But also more grounded somehow. Less polished, more real. She wore scrubs from the hospital, her hair pulled back simply. She saw me and stopped, like she couldn't quite believe I was actually there. I gestured to the chair across from me. She approached slowly, carefully, like I might vanish. "Thank you for inviting me," she said quietly, sitting down. "I wasn't sure you would. Ever." "I wasn't sure either," I admitted. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I said, "I heard you're working at the hospital. How is it?" "Hard." "Good. I'm starting over at the bottom, which is humbling. But I'm grateful to have it." She paused. "I got the scholarship." "Your scholarship?" "I didn't know if you knew." "I knew. I almost didn't apply. It felt wrong, taking money from the fund you created with, well. But my therapist said that was pride talking, that if I was serious about rebuilding, I needed to use every legitimate resource available. So I applied. And I tried to earn it fairly." "You did earn it," I said. "The selection committee didn't know our relationship. You won on merit." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your fairness." "Probably not," I agreed. "But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because holding on to anger was becoming more exhausting than letting it go." We talked for an hour. Not about the money or the betrayal, not directly. About her therapy, her job, her small apartment with plants she was learning to keep alive. About my travels with Gordon, the shelter dogs, the scholarship students. It was stilted and careful and nowhere near normal. But it was something. As we were leaving, Vanessa said, "I don't expect us to be close again." I know I destroyed that. But if you'd be willing to have coffee again sometime, I'd like that. No pressure. Just, if you're willing. I looked at my daughter, this person who'd wished me dead, who'd spent my funeral money, who'd become someone unrecognizable and was now trying to find her way back to human. And I thought about Robert, about what he'd want, about what kind of person I wanted to be in whatever years I had left. "Maybe in a few months," I said. "Let's see how things go." She nodded, accepting that. "Thank you, Mom." I didn't say, "You're welcome." I wasn't there yet. But I didn't say no either. Now, it's been 6 months since that first coffee. We've met 3 more times. The conversations are getting easier, less weighted. She's still rebuilding. I'm still cautious. We're not mother and daughter the way we were before. We'll never be that again. But we might be something new eventually. Something built on honesty instead of obligation. My will hasn't changed. The main estate still goes to the shelter and the scholarship fund. But that conditional provision for Vanessa remains the one she doesn't know about. 6 more years of proving herself, and she'll get $25,000. Not life-changing money, but a recognition that sustained effort deserves acknowledgement. Will she make it? I genuinely don't know. And honestly, the money isn't the point anymore. The point is that she's trying. And I'm choosing day by day whether to let that trying matter. So here's what I learned from all of this, from the betrayal and the revenge and the complicated aftermath. Justice and healing are not the same thing. You can get justice, I got it, completely and thoroughly, and still feel broken. Vanessa lost everything, faced every consequence, and it was satisfying for about 5 minutes. Then it was just sad. Because destroying someone, even someone who deserves it, doesn't actually repair what they broke in you. What does repair it? I'm still figuring that out. But I think it has something to do with choosing to live fully despite what they did, rather than organizing your entire existence around making them pay. It has to do with recognizing that people can be both the worst thing they ever did and more than that worst thing, and holding both truths simultaneously is exhausting but necessary. I'm 76 years old. Dr. Morrison still says I'm on track for my 90s. I have a husband I love, friends who make me laugh, causes I care about, and a life that feels meaningful. I also have a daughter who tried to bury me alive financially and who's now working checkout shifts and volunteering with rescue dogs to try to become someone she can live with. Both things are true. Both things matter. And if there's a moral to this story, it's this: revenge will give you satisfaction, but it won't give you peace. Peace is harder. Peace requires you to decide that your life is worth more than their punishment, that your joy matters more than their suffering, that you'd rather be free than right. I'm not all the way there yet. Maybe I never will be, but I'm trying. Just like Vanessa's trying. Just like maybe we all are, in our own ways, to be better than our worst moments. So, let me ask you this. Have you ever experienced betrayal like this? Have you ever had someone you love treat you like a resource instead of a person? And if so, what did you do about it? Did you go for total destruction like I did? Are you still carrying that anger around, letting it define you? Or have you found some kind of peace I'm still searching for? I want to hear your story. Because here's what I've realized. We're all trying to figure out how to handle the people who hurt us, how to balance justice with mercy, how to protect ourselves without becoming hardened. And maybe the only way we learn is by sharing our experiences, our failures, our complicated victories. So leave me a comment below. Tell me about your betrayal story. Tell me how you handled it, whether you'd do it differently now, what you learned. And if you're still in the middle of it, still deciding what to do, maybe the comments section can become a place where we help each other figure out the right path, or at least the path we can live with. Because that's what this channel is really about, isn't it? Not just revenge stories, but the messy, complicated truth of what comes after revenge. The part where you have to figure out how to live with what you've done and what's been done to you. The part where you decide what kind of person you want to be when the dust settles. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories like this. Real, raw, complicated stories about betrayal and justice and the gray areas between them. Ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. And please share your story in the comments. I read every single one and your experiences matter. We're all just trying to figure out how to be human in a world that sometimes makes being human incredibly difficult. Let's figure it out together. Thanks for listening to my story. Now I want to hear yours.